Sup Shredders, my name is Logan, aka Spiderhands, and welcome to an SP Reacts, where today we have ourselves a track from an act named Sjelløs, titled ERASURE, and if we switch over to here, we have ourselves a track on the screen on YouTube. Hopefully I'm not mispronouncing the name. We're going to listen through this track from start till finish, and we're going to hear what we think. Let's do it. What have we got?
No siren warned her, no postbellum on miracles her. Erasure, collateral made clean. Erasure, no trace where she's been.
This has got a really unusual sort of guitar tone. Is this? This is either someone's recorded the guitar takes in the center of the field and double tracked them by copying them as opposed to playing the separate rhythm parts to avoid getting into trouble for this. Is this potentially AI generated music? It's just the guitars themselves, you know. The growls and the screams are fantastic, though.
She was not a number, but numbers buried her. Erasure, no mother left to scream. Erasure, you called her a dream. Erasure, you rejected her fire. Erasure, one more goes for the wire. A crayon lies beside the crater. It drew a flower. Now it draws silence. No!
It could just be the guitar tone's just a little bit unusual. And I'm being specific with the guitar tone itself. I appreciate the way a lot of this was done, but we're going to talk about it more in the conclusion. And so welcome to the conclusion, my review of this track from Matt named Sjelløs, titled ERASURE. What do we think this track is about? I think that this track is about someone who is just been destroyed, either deliberately or as part of a devastating tragedy that has occurred. They explode and they just don't even exist anymore. Just, you know, a sanitized death. That's just how brutal it is. Like as if that person was a dream, they just don't exist anymore. And it's incredibly heavy. In this section, I'm going to talk about a few things, 2 or 3 things that I thought was done well with track alongside some constructive critique. I think one of the things that sort of carries the heaviness of the track is the vocal styles. There's this kind of visceral vocal fry, these screams, the kind of shrieks that occur, and they convey the aggression, the frustration, the fury with the situation so elegantly, you know. It's such an effective way to demonstrate how visceral it is, alongside having those words in the story being told to also have it hit like a megaton bomb. And I just think that you could not have really done the vocals in a way here which would have made them more meaningful. Having the whispered parts and other bits kind of brought things down with an artificial sense of dynamic range there because the mix was quite glued. But I do appreciate what was going on in terms of the variation within the vocal performance itself. I think that's done well. And there's also a bit of vocal fry and color with the melodies within those chorus sections, which is also effective. You know, you have a somewhat sort of like semi-reasonable amount of catchiness for the most part with those chord progressions, and we're attentive to how the vocals need to harmonize with those. I mean, it's a short song at 1 minute 53, so we tell the story we need to without being too on the nose, but it's also brutal and hits home. I mean, just the imagery of the crayon, you know, drawing the flower and everything like that, you know, it hits home. I think outside of my feelings on the actual tone of the guitar within this, which we'll talk about in the production stage, I think the use of the sort of like 7 or 8 string guitars mixed with the heaviness of the different sort of kick and snare patterns there, the way they thump and pull in the headphones is fantastic. It's just a really sort of like gruesome tone that I think is required for music like this. If it was gentle and fragrant and resonant in the mid to uppers, I don't think it'd necessarily portray the devastation that's occurred. And there's like kind of a grit and interesting tone to those chords on the guitar as well, alongside those double kicks there. It's a nice sense of kind of contrast rhythmically between the chords on the guitar and the flow of everything else within the mix, you know. And I was just reading in the description that apparently all the vocals were done by Sjelløs, which I think is fantastic. That's a really solid effort there, you know. I love that range there. I think that it's effective use of time. And so the fact that we had those different vocal styles there on top of a track which had some interesting sort of like djenty kind of middle chorus elements there was tight. And I think having the kind of gritty, dusty guitar tone at the end where it talks about the flowers and the silence and everything like that, it kind of lets you know that things are fading out in a way that's not particularly pleasant or positive for obvious reasons there. Just allowing things to come down at the end is really satisfying. And I think there's a great sort of like awareness to the need of a bell curve after the intensity of the blast there to sort of talk about what occurred in the aftermath. I still feel like we could have double tracked the guitar riffs on the side of the stereo field just so that it filled it out really neatly, because it just seems a bit sort of mid-oriented, but again, that's a post-production thing. And there's not a wide amount of development with the piece in terms of, again, the different sort of rhythm elements there, like you've got power chord elements or sort of mid-range chords with some octave chords on the guitar parts, but I don't think we necessarily needed to have too many alt leads when we've got such a short track. I feel like in terms of structure, it's well fleshed out. I think finally, in terms of post-production, again, outside of my comments on the guitars and sort of double tracking them and stuff like that, and needing a bit more kind of like substance to the tone there, to kind of keep up with like those drum elements there. The percussion's heavy as hell within this one, and works really neatly with the vocals. I think generally things were quite well leveled there. There was no issues there. I think that you could hear the vocals clearly in the mix, whether it was the whispers or the screams, and it represented itself really neatly. It was an interesting experience for sure, hearing this. I think how kind of gritty and cold it sounded there with the fury of the tone of the rhythm elements in the lower end there, and the pull and the style and genre we had matched the subject matter. And yeah, no, honestly, like I think that there's a mixture of different breakdown and sort of traditional chorus kind of pick patterns on the kit there. And just to conclude, I do feel that the combination of the vocal style with the variety of ways that can communicate and how the expression relates to the lyrics, in addition to the varying sort of different guitar and bass motifs and how they kind of riffed and transferred with each other, combined with how kind of glued and how things were leveled in the mix, those are positive things. And again, it's just a comment about the double tracking of the guitars in future that I feel could elevate this. It'd be interesting to see what we could sort of achieve with a longer format kind of track, but either way, thank you for watching my review of this track from an act named Sjelløs, titled ERASURE, and hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please do go show them some love via their various social medias and their YouTube page, and stay cool and stay safe, and please remember to support your local musicians and artists at this point in time, as they need the help more than ever with all the crazy stuff going on in the world. And I'll catch you in the next SP Reacts. Spiderhands out.